All right, guys, back again. Thanks for, I say tuning in. I'm not sure if it's really tuning in or listening because we don't really tune in the radio to YouTube or to Instagram. I have a special friend, I think an acquaintance, a friend, Dawn. Who are
Something
you?
like that, yes. I'm an associate. I've known
Associate.
Dan for a while now.
Fortunately or unfortunately for you, we know each other. Now, the people who are watching this are going to think, wait, Dan, you had her on 2 weeks ago, but now she has
Similar.
shorter hair. What happened there? So she's a twin of Kimberly, who I had on a few weeks ago. So that's why whoever's watching this doesn't know that she's actually twins. There's actually two of you, or one of you somewhere around here.
We've got identical DNA.
So today I brought Dawn on because she is a mom with three young kids, ages...
So my oldest is 7, and then I have a 5-year-old, and then I have a little girl that it turns 3 on the 11th. So just a couple days, about a week away.
Quite a house full. And one thing that we have wondered about, or I've wondered about, is parents who all of a sudden 3 weeks ago, was it 3 weeks ago, a month?
Mm-hmm.
That
It's been 3 weeks.
That the school board decided, hey, we're going to have kids stay at home, and here we go. And I thought, man, parents, how are they dealing with that? Especially if you're used to a parent that maybe sends your kids off home to school for a couple hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. Now you have 24/7 literally with kids.
Yeah.
How's that been for you?
It's been rough. You know, the first week especially was very, very rough, and I think that was partly because I felt overwhelmed with everything. I hadn't really thought this virus was that serious. I had just found out that a trip I'd been planning for an entire year, like literally like the day before it started, was canceled. The event that I was going to was canceled. And so I was like really depressed from that. And I couldn't understand why people were so upset with this. So I felt very thrown into it. And so all of a sudden they're like, oh, and we're keeping the kids at home. And I was like, oh, yeah, I can't take that right now. And I love my kids being home. I do. But this is a different situation, right? And so had to deal with them being home. But then the poor teachers as well, they didn't know what they were doing yet either. So this has been such a learning curve for all of us. And they would send me information, have them log into this, do that. And I'm like, where are you even at? I don't even know what website you're on, all of this stuff.
Right.
I wasn't sure. So there was a lot of information that we didn't have quite yet. And they were learning things and I was learning things. And that first week, as we both stumbled through it, the parents and the teachers, as we stumbled through it, and the kids being like, I'm sorry, you can't do this. We have to actually focus on this. And it's 8 p.m. at night, and my first grader hasn't gotten through her work yet. And I'm like, oh my gosh. That first week was really rough. And I think that's what happens when you get thrown into something that you don't necessarily want to be doing, and then you don't know how to do it. And the help that you're getting is also floundering to no fault of their own. So it was a rough situation that first week. The second week was definitely a lot better. I knew where I needed to be. I knew what the assignments were. I knew how to get help when I needed it. A lot better. My kids were able to sit at a computer and go through a lot of their work on their own while I dealt with the other 2 children. And now we've had a week of spring break. And so I'm a little bit scared of Monday again, that we're out of our rhythm again.
Right. The school starts back up again, right?
Starts back up again on Monday. Right. We're all home, at least for the next month.
Yeah.
As of right now, we're still scheduled to go back the first part of May.
What do you think? Do you think it's going to...
I don't...
Okay.
I want to keep my fingers crossed because I've got summer plans going. But
yeah.
I'm optimistic, and we've been doing really well so far, flattening the curve. I'm optimistic that things may or may not change, but I'm afraid that it won't. Simply because logistically speaking, we've all been out for 3 weeks now, but if we send all bazillion of us back at once, then we've got the same issue going on. It will have destroyed all the work. So I'd say there's at least an 80% chance, if not higher, that we're home for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
So I think we're probably done. But it's rough. It's been a learning experience for all of us.
And one thing we had talked about before, usually, so we'll say in summertime, kids go out and play with your other kids or friends, have fun. Now everyone's self-quarantining. They can't, so your kids can't go and play with their friends. So it's probably hard for them too. So it's adjustment for you and your husband, and also for your children who can't go play with their friends,
Yes.
and what kind of stresses, maybe not stresses or challenges where your kids can't go and play with each other have you seen?
Well, so think of as an adult, you're here and you are trying to reach out to friends, and it's hard to not be able to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my kids are the same way. They're very social, and they're like throwing a tantrum on the floor, and I just want to go and see my friends. I just want to go play with my friends. It's really tough on them. The other day, it was a nice, beautiful day, so we went out social distancing with our friends, and so we have a good friend. They live on one side of the street, and we live across the other. So they did sidewalk chalk here, and we did sidewalk chalk here, and they literally yelled across the street for like an hour, and that's as close as we could get. We're really, really lucky in this day and age, though, because we have technology. So they've been using apps to talk to their friends.
Yeah.
It's really funny. My phone is going crazy with my daughter, who's just learned how to work Marco Polo, and she hides under the blanket, and she's in there, and it's like, hi. And so
to you or to her
no,
friends?
to her friends.
Oh, okay.
So, and then all her friends are like 3 words back. Boop, boop, boop. So the phone's like ding, ding,
Nice.
ding, ding. And I open it up, and there's like 15
On
little
your
3-second messages. But it's good for them. They need that social interaction as much as we do, and it's rough. Like, my husband came home, and I was like, you know what? I need to go get the milk. And he's like, I can go get that for you. I'm like, no.
You want to go get the milk,
No,
right?
I will go get some
yeah.
milk. I will go get the milk. I'll make the sacrifice, honey. I need to actually walk out of the house. So, it's a big adjustment for all of us.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to realize that it's hard on the kids, it's hard on us, and to give ourselves a little bit of time, a little bit of breathing space when we can. Not everything's going to work out perfect. So my little one that I was worried about 8 o'clock at night, she doesn't have her schoolwork done. You know what? She doesn't have her schoolwork done. She doesn't, and that's fine too.
Okay, and I don't have a young one. So with this homeschooling stuff, can they do, is assignments kind of every day you do them, or can I do them when you can do them, or is there
I think it's probably a teacher-based thing, what they can get assigned. So with my daughter that's in 1st grade, her teacher is sending stuff out. She'll send out a bunch of stuff either very early in the morning or late the night before.
Okay.
And then there's some things that she's like, okay, you need to be getting on these programs every day. So we know that there's those things lined up. My kindergartner, the teacher has sent home their regular packet. She sends it every Monday, a little packet that we print out, and he does all the homework on it, and he fills it in, and then I take a picture and send it to the teacher. And then there's a couple of programs on the computer that he has to log in and do every day. It takes him about 45 minutes, and then we read a little bit of book. So it's one of the other things that's really hard, though, is having a 1st grader that has to be in school all day versus a kindergartner who's done in an hour. And it's rough, because then he's done and he's like, Mom, I'm gonna go play, and she's like,
yeah, she wants to go
and
play.
so then it's much harder for her to focus. If they're both focusing together, it's mostly okay. The littlest one causes some issues, but when one gets done and the other one's not, it's rough.
Well, and that's where the adjustment we speak of comes in too, because you have, I imagine that household that you just talked about with your household is very similar to many households. We're in Utah here, and so there's different age groups of kids. Some in 1st grade, some maybe in high school, right?
Yes.
And so that kid's done, okay, I'm going to go on my phone for a while, or this kid has 4 more hours to go. So I could see that as an adjustment. Touching on the homeschool part, I would say most parents, one day, okay, so we'll say 3 weeks ago, they were going around their merry lives, and all of a sudden, okay, school board sends an email out, if that's what it was, or a text message. Starting on Monday, whatever that day that was going to be, you'll be homeschooling, here's all your material. Maybe that might be dramatic. So if I'm a parent, I would think, I have no idea how to do this. You've had some background in teaching as a substitute teacher years ago, so you have that. But I can see, even talking to you, even with that background that you have, how hard it is to jump back in there.
It is, and it's, it's time organization. And when I did substitute teaching, I did probably 95% of it I did at the junior high school level.
Okay.
So you're dealing, at that time they had 45-minute classes. and it was 45 minutes, and then it was bye-bye, see you later, you
Yeah.
done. And if it was a horrible 45 minutes, that's okay because it's only 45 minutes. And then you're moving on. And not only that, it was all one science class. We were all doing the same thing. It wasn't like, okay, little 5-year-old, you need to learn your ABCs, and I'm teaching multiplication to my first grader. You know, it's really hard to balance those two things. And that's something I think when you homeschool, you learn those techniques and how to deal with that. I've been reading a lot of articles about how to homeschool.
Yeah.
But it's that balancing act can be really tough. It can be really tough, even with the teaching background that I have. And mine's not extensive, but
Yeah, you probably more than probably a lot of people do.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I thought about just as you spoke to, so we'll say that I'm homeschooling somebody, a kid, and it's math, and I'm not very good at math. I'm terrible at math, right? So he's doing algebra 2 or geometry. Are there resources for me as a parent or a caretaker, if I can help my kid? Do the school have, is there resources I can draw back off the teacher? Or?
You are still supposed to be able to contact your teachers, and I've been able to do that. It's really hard for them to get them to respond quite immediately, which understandable. They're still dealing with their everything as well.
Yeah.
However, one of the great suggestions that I've seen floating around the motherhood pool in our neighborhood was to call one of, like, if you have an elementary school or a junior high school age child, call a high schooler and offer them $5-10 an hour to Zoom conference or help your child. Because when I get into geometry, I was an English major.
Right.
I haven't touched geometry since 11th grade. That was a long time ago.
Right.
So it's you know, like that's something. So far, I can still handle first grade math. Like I've got this. The vocabulary is a little different for me, but I've still got this. But you know, by the time they're getting, especially with the new core curriculum and things like that, their techniques have changed. They're doing it a different way than we've learned, so that can be very frustrating for parents.
Right.
And I have heard we've got mom and child ending up in tears and throwing in the books, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's tough. But I thought that was a great suggestion. Offer one of these high school students $5-10 to tutor your kid over Zoom or different video conferencing. They're at home too. They might have a little extra time on their hands. You know, see what's out there, see what's available to help. We also have a few teachers in our neighborhood that have said, hey, call me. So.
Well, yeah, you touched upon the Zoom, so technology. So parents can still talk to each other. You might have a friend that's good at geometry or a teacher you talked about. So I think when I think of the coronavirus and the things, maybe the negatives, there are maybe some positives or some things we can look at. And that to me is a networking, like we talked about.
Yeah.
You know, hiring teenagers or high school kids to help, connecting with parents in your neighborhood, ward, stakes, that sort of thing. Do you see? So my question now is: so we'll say that we have your kids will probably not go to school this year. You're thinking it's going to be you until May 1st.
Yeah.
And then, so how does one get a certificate? So are you able to do that final test, or how is that testing?
So the testing for Utah has been canceled this year.
Oh, okay.
That's all I can tell you. I don't know. I don't know how strict they are with kindergartners and first graders.
Yeah.
I can imagine that it's more difficult the older they get. I know that some colleges are dropping the requirements for like the ACT and SAT scores.
So if someone's a senior or junior who wants to take those tests, they can't go and do it.
Right, because the situation is wrong. So I've heard there's a few colleges, everybody's making adjustments. Everybody's going to have to do some different things. I don't think that there's going to be a way to do that testing that those end of year testing level things. But they're supposed to be turning in homework. They're supposed to be doing assignments. So keeping it as normal as possible while still realizing this is a massive change for everybody, for the whole system.
There's great advancement. So if your daughter who's is she in first grade? So she does her homework, which she's been doing, it sounds like, and she'll go in advance to second grade next year.
Yep.
Now, what if, there was a parent out there who had a child who is a student too that maybe wasn't quite getting the material, could that parent say, hey teacher, Mr. Johnson, Mrs. Johnson, my kid needs to be held back a year or something? Do you know anything about that yet, or is that still?
I have no idea, but it is something that concerns me. I volunteer in my daughter's school, so I know that there's some kids that really, really struggle and need some extra attention and extra help. It's something that concerns me because I love those kids. Since I've been in the classroom, I know who they are and I know what their struggles are, and it does worry me because not everybody has a strong support group at home. So I don't know how that will work out. I honestly don't. They might have to do some assessments first part of next year.
Yeah, and maybe see
So,
kind of where they're at.
The teachers should still be quite familiar with where they're at, though, because they are supposed to be turning in assignments and stuff. So.
And I imagine, so we talked about your children who can't play with other children. Have you noticed maybe some anxiety on their part, maybe where they can't go see? In fact, a couple hours ago I was here, well, I've been here for a while, and your daughter was she FaceTiming her friend? Or
Yes.
So we have that technology to have that work. I still feel like that the kids are missing out the most on that interaction.
Yes.
If it's recess,
Yes.
lunchtime, playtime.
Yeah.
So have you seen some anxiety from your kids about not able to see their friends one-on-one?
Well, I think just my older two kids understand the situation better than my 3-year-old, obviously, my almost 3-year-old.
Yeah.
But she, it's hard for them to not be able to go out, and that creates anxiety, just the differences and stuff. But I try to keep things as normal as possible. I feel pretty lucky because I'm not generally a stressor. I'm not a high anxiety kind of person, pretty mellow. So I don't think that they've been exposed to a lot of that nervousness and fear and stuff. We did have an earthquake, and that kind of freaked them out for a couple of days.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
It did. They both slept through it,
Okay.
but they did feel some of the aftershocks. So they've got a little bit of that. But I do listen to the news and things like that. I do like to be aware of what's going on. So today we were doing a social distancing Easter egg hunt at my house, and so I'm setting up times for families to come and do Easter egg hunts as a family in my yard because there's going to be no community events this year, obviously. So I was filling Easter eggs today, and they went and put on gloves, and they kept putting sanitizer all over their gloves, and they're like, we want to make sure none of these eggs have coronavirus. And I'm like, well, okay, they're going to be sitting there for another week.
Right.
It should be gone by then, regardless, but okay, but so they're hearing things, they know what it is. I've talked to them and I've told them, we know people that are high risk. We've got grandma and grandpa, and we've got they've got a cousin that is high risk, and so I've talked to them that there are people we have to be concerned, and that's why we're staying in our house. However, for them, I'm going to be as honest as possible, and the information that we have right now says that, fortunately for them, they're in a very, 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 very low risk group right now.
Right.
Helps me feel better knowing that, and it helps them feel better. I've told them, they're not going to get super duper sick from this, no matter what happens, and I think it helps them to know that. They're in a very, very low percentile right now, and that makes me a happy mommy.
Well, that's good too, and I think it's important, like you talked about, as a parent, how to talk to your kids about if it's the coronavirus, trauma, anything. And I think you guys are doing it very good to be honest, like you said, but to do it in a way that's the kid can understand it if they're in kindergarten or second grade or high school.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very important thing as parents to do, to talk to kids about that. I always wonder with one thing too with children, I tend to think, well, kids, they'll be fine. They're actually more susceptible to things, and you know this firsthand more than I do. They understand things more than we think they do.
Yeah.
The kids are so open.
When they start, they know the coronavirus, they know COVID-19, they know all of these terms for it. They know that it's a global pandemic. They hear it all.
Yeah.
So they know.
If a parent was to ask what he or she could do the best to talk to kids about something like this, what would you say?
I think that you need to be well informed. Okay. So I know what the statistics are. And then I think that it's great to be honest with them. I think in any conversation, you need to be honest with your kids, but you need to make sure you're doing it at a level that they understand. They don't necessarily need to understand that thousands of people are dying in New York City. And when I see the pictures of Times Square completely empty, because I love that city, I've been there many, many times. It breaks my heart, right? It breaks my heart. But my kids don't need to understand all of that yet. They don't. That's too much for them. They need to understand that we're gonna be good citizens. We're going to stay in our house, and we're going to not go close to our neighbors. And like I have an elderly neighbor that lives across the street, and I help him every single day. There's a lot of things he can't do for himself, so I go and change the kitty box for him, and I go and get his groceries for him, and I go and get him lunch, things like that, because I love him to death. But today I was like to my kids, I'm like, okay, you guys can play out on his porch, or you can play just right inside the door, but don't get too close to him yet, right? We want to make sure we're being careful because he is in that high risk category, just like grandma and grandpa. We just have to be careful with some of our friends, and some of them we're not such a high risk, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
We want to be responsible citizens, and that's what you teach your kids at all times. I'm assuming that everybody wants responsible citizens and hardworking citizens. So we raise our kids to be respectful of the rules, and this is what we've been asked to do, so we do it.
What lessons do you think you'll take away as a parent of 3 smaller kids when this coronavirus stuff moves on and we're done with this? What lessons will you take from this, I think?
I think just part of, we go on, right? I mean, life is life, and things that are stressful. The world has always had stressful things going on. As an English major, I read a lot of novels. I read a lot of history. And there's things that people had to deal with. I think putting things in perspective of where we are, looking for the good in things, and being able to handle what's thrown at us. You know what I mean? Like it makes us stronger. It makes us better people. And then appreciating what we do have. It's rough being home with your kids 24/7. I love them. And I love being with them, but sometimes it can be really, you need a break, right? And it's hard to not have that. But one thing that I read with the homeschooling things that I've been studying up on, it says to not let your kids feel like they're causing the problem, that they're in the way of you doing what you need. I have got to fold socks, and I've got to fold them now, and you're interrupting me. It happens, right? We all have things that we think we need to get done right then and there. But it's really important to make sure that they feel like they're not causing a problem that's out of their control. And so I think that coronavirus or no, that's something that I need to take with me. I love them being there. They need to know that. And do I get frustrated? Yes, I do. But I need to make sure that I'm really not frustrated with me or the situation and taking it out on them. So and I think that can go at any time, and it doesn't have to be a pandemic going on to realize that sometimes you get mad at your kids for things that are out of their control.
Yeah, that's true.
So
I imagine there's parents that'll watch this, or parents right now who won't watch this, are thinking, you know what, I get with my kid every day, I can't with my kid. I would think as a parent, they need a break too, like you said.
Yeah.
And so what would be a good way, as a parent, what would be a good way they could actually do that without feeling guilty about leaving their kids?
So that's actually something that I struggle with constantly, pandemic or no. Because I chose to be a stay-at-home mom. I'm with my kids all the time. So that school break was really nice. I was down to one child most of the time. I have a kindergartner, so they are on a half day, so they were home. But that's something that I've struggled with since I decided to become a stay-at-home mom. So one of the things that I do, I run. And my kids, they have my DNA. We like to sleep in and stay up late. And so fortunately my kiddos sleep in. So I wake up, which I don't like because I just told you this is not my DNA. I wake up just before 6 every morning, and I either run or I cross train 6 days a week.
Oh, okay.
And that time that I have to myself to think, to ponder, to meditate when you're out running. It's very meditative state that you can get into. That time by myself is so important, not just mentally, but physically. You're getting those endorphins and you're building a lot of good energy. So I think waking up and taking some time for you. Maybe you're not a runner. That's okay. I was not a runner until about 10, 12 years ago. So that's okay. Don't run, but take some time to do some meditation. Sit, give yourself some time. Paint your fingernails. Read a book, and try and do it in the morning before those kids wake up, so that you're the priority. Give yourself some time to take time for just you. It's kind of like when you get on an airplane and they say, if there's an emergency, put your face mask on and then help the child. It's really important that you are
good analogy.
ready, right?
Yeah.
So I wake up in the morning and I go for my run, and I come home and I take a nice long hot shower until I hear blah, 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 blah on the door.
That's your kids, right?
That's the kids.
Okay, not an earthquake? Okay,
Not an earthquake. I was running during the earthquake, and I didn't.
Right, you were.
I didn't even feel
running.
it. So
Right.
yeah, so I was out doing my morning run, and all of a sudden my phone was like ding 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 ding, and I was like, what? Oh my gosh, we had an earthquake. So it was a big surprise for me.
Yeah.
But take some time for you. Another thing, my mom taught me this, and I've never forgotten it, and I love it. Every day I wake up after I get done doing my exercise or whatever and taking a shower, I get dressed and I do my hair and I do my makeup. Those are me things. Again, that's feeding my spirit, my energy. If you sit around in your pajamas all day, you don't accomplish, you don't feel it. You might have like cleaned your entire house, but you're still in your pajamas and you might not feel it. But if you wake up and you put on your clothes, you're ready for the day, it makes you feel better. I know a lot of moms are like, I don't bother with the makeup. You know what? It's fine. I don't care. Everybody's different. I love makeup. It makes me feel happy. It makes me feel pretty, and it feeds my soul. It feeds my energy. So I do my hair every day. I do my makeup every day. I get dressed every day. I make my bed every day, so that I have some things that are staying in my life. Because as soon as those kids are pounding on that door, things are going to go crazy.
Well, that's good advice. Well, thank you for your time. We've had some good advice, good analogies. I love the analogy about the airplane mask coming down. Great analogy. So parents out there, take care of yourself. Have some time for you. If it's 5 minutes, an hour, whatever you can do. And also, I think that the thing that we can learn here, that I've learned from you, Dawn, is that parents are adaptable. We're all adaptable. The parents, if they don't know what they're studying, reach out to your neighbors, your friends, the teachers. And I think one thing that came to my mind as we talked too as well is, in a crisis, if we call this a crisis, we still can come out of this thing ahead of this thing, because we can learn things about ourselves more than this virus or whatever's going on out there, whatever it is. We can learn so much about ourselves and our family. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it, Dawn.
Welcome.
I can't hug you, but we can do the elbows because of the coronavirus. That's how we social distance.
Ish.
Thank you for, I guess we say, tuning in, watching, those of you on social media, subscribing. I would say stay safe and don't touch your face.